talking of common sense, my good mate, Candice Holdsworth. How are you? Glad to see you back in the presenter's friend chair.
It's been such a long time. I love it. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Well, look, we love you too, because you're full of common sense. So shall we talk about some of this stuff?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this grooming gang probe. Right. So it's taken the Labour government 2 weeks, having humiliated themselves by saying, well, you know, child rape, is that really such a big deal? Do we really need to probe it? Do we really need a proper inquiry with teeth? No, I don't think we do. And because of huge pressure from parliamentarians, particularly Reform, I have to say, and to a lesser extent, I think Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch and so on, and most of the media, although the left elements of the media, of course, have been rather, you know, apologist as ever, but including Elon Musk, who, of course, has waded in, which I welcome on the basis of freedom of speech. So the government have kind of given in a bit, Candice, but only on a very limited local inquiry basis. What do you make of that?
I think they're so out of step with public opinion and they don't even realise it. There was a really good poll by JL Partners. I mean, they're one of the few polling companies to have predicted the US election correctly. So they're very good. They've got their finger on the pulse. And they have shown comprehensively that the public supports a national inquiry. Yeah. You know, the reason that this caught fire isn't because everyone's jumping on a far-right bandwagon, as they seem to think in the Labour Party. It's because it has real cultural resonance right now. These are the things people are talking about. I can imagine 8 years ago, if Elon Musk had started talking about this, no one would have cared. They would have been like, what's he talking about? But now, at this moment in time, it's massive. And it's not just that, you know, it's Elon Musk and he's this, you know, big political figure with this huge following. It's because it's important to the people of Britain right now.
Well, and some Labour MPs seem to have recognised that. So a couple of broken ranks, including, additionally, Andy Burnham, of course, was an MP, is now the Mayor of Greater Manchester. So 3 or 4 Labour MPs have actually found some principles, it seems, and have said, yeah, we also think that there should be an inquiry into this. And just to be clear, look, the difference between a national inquiry, which would have power, which would have teeth, and a limited local inquiry at council level, it is like this. Let me set it out as I see it. If it's a local inquiry, first of all, it would presumably be overseen by the council itself. The problem with the council overseeing a probe into grooming gang criminality in its own area is that effectively that's the council marking its own homework.
Yes.
So how are we possibly going to get proper scrutiny and outcomes from a council that is looking into itself and its own councillors and its own council officers? That seems to me to be the first problem with this in terms of the first hurdle being knocked over. The second is that because it's potentially a local probe, a local inquiry and investigation, it would mean that they don't have much power. So they can't, for instance, make people give evidence under oath, which a parliamentary, a national probe would do. But also, they won't be able to requisition evidence like a national inquiry would. So what do you make of this in terms of the U-turn? Although it's not quite a U-turn, it's kind of not a a 180. It's a kind of 90-degree turn, isn't it? Because it's a partial giving in. But the Labour government, the front bench, Yvette Cooper, Keir Starmer, Jess Phillips, are still scared rigid of a proper probe. Now, we can all speculate as to why that will be, and I'm going to do that, by the way. I would speculate it's because Keir Starmer will be seen as wanting, as the former Director of Public Prosecutions. I think it's because various Labour-controlled councils and councillors have sought to cover this up over decades. Some might say, actually, perhaps some Labour politicians are even more implicated. I will leave that right there. And so, you know, it's clear that the Labour front bench, and the problem for them is it's so obvious that the reason that they are preventing a national inquiry is because they themselves as a collective, as a party, are culpable. As a consequence of that, we all know that they're culpable. So, you know, they've painted themselves into a corner. So, I mean, does it satisfy anyone that this local thing now has been decided upon by Yvette Cooper yesterday?
No, because it will fail to look at everything. All the points you outlined are absolutely right, and I agree with them. But I think as well it will fail to look at things on a systematic level. I mean, we need to know how far this problem goes. And we need, the terms of reference need to be set in a very focused way so that we understand exactly what happened in all these institutions that failed. The police, the social services, you know, people have brought up other things like family breakdown, for instance, in those communities. I mean, a lot of the girls who were targeted were very, very vulnerable, and these gangs knew that. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be looked at, and you're just not going to do that if you're hyper-focused on one local area.
Well, and it's just 5 areas. So,
yes.
you know, it is very clear and very much the case that this rape gang, and that's, again, as we do on this channel, let's talk about this as it is, child rape, not just grooming, because grooming rather kind of glosses over the enormity, the seriousness of what this is. Thousands of young white girls, underage, raped by largely Pakistani grooming gangs, right? Let's tell it as it is. But across dozens and dozens of towns and cities across Britain. So the fact that this only probes 5 of those towns is surely inadequate. The fact that the police have said that there are currently, I think, 179 incidents under investigation now across 29 police forces. So, you know, we have to ask the question as to why only 5 have been selected. What about all of the others? Because this is clearly an epidemic, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. I think that it's still going on, and I think it's very interesting, you know, the shift from the very euphemistic term of grooming gangs to rape gangs. People are really sort of getting to grips with this now, and people don't want this language which isn't straight talking, which doesn't look it in the face, and isn't hard-headed. People want this to be solved now.
Let me put it a different way. If you are one of the apologists on the Labour side of the argument, whether you're, you know, an observer or indeed a politician, let me just suggest to you that you look through this through the eyes of you being a parent of one of those 13 or 14-year-old girls. I think you might start to see things slightly differently. Let's move on to Migrants and Kemi Badenoch, talking very tough. I mean, she does sound very reform-like, doesn't she? When yesterday she said, migrants who refuse to embrace British culture should live elsewhere. I mean, it's the old kind of trope, isn't it, that, you know, go back to where you came from. But she's got a point. Why would you want to come to Britain and not like it? Why would you not want to abide by our rules, our culture, our conventions? Why would you not understand that, you know, we can live side by side, different cultures, different races, different religions? Why would you come here thinking that you can change us to your culture and your religion? I think that's what she's getting at.
Yes, I mean, we should have expected a lot more of immigrants before. I mean, obviously, like you say, you don't want to be draconian, you know, you want us all to live nicely side by side. But I can't believe that this is only the conversation we are having now after such huge, large-scale migration. I mean, one of the problems is, and people have said this, you know, it can't be mindless. You've got to think about 2 different cultures, how they are going to adapt to one another. And British culture, there's a reason people want to move here, and there's a reason people want to settle here, because it's a culture that's delivered a great deal of prosperity, high living standards, great innovations, great inventions. That's the reason that so many people want to come here. So you want to preserve that. And to me, that's just obvious. But I think that's the reason why we're shifting from saying grooming gangs to rape gangs, because I think that the sort of thinking around it before was incredibly lax and incredibly unstructured. And it's caused massive problems.
But we didn't have this in the 1950s and 60s when people came here from the West Indies, when people came here from Ireland, later when people came here from India. We didn't have this cultural non-integration issue. We didn't have, you know, protests. We didn't have spite. We didn't have this clash of cultures that we seem to have had really over the last 4 or 5 years. And, you know, and there's one thing that's changed there, and that is the demographic of those that are coming here.
Yes.
But, you know, others that have come here over the last 30 or 40 years that make up the fabric of Britain in a very positive way, in my opinion, have wanted to come here for good reason, have settled, have integrated, and have, you know, provided a contribution to Britain and, as I say, its fabric and society. That seems to have gone very, very wrong over the last few years. Let me know what you think about this and why, by the way, out there listening and watching this. 0344 499 1000. Do give me a call and let me know. I'll just remind you of that breaking news. Jake Farry, so he is the individual that was convicted of the murder of Jimmy Misen in 2009, served only 14 years in jail, was let out and decided that he would break his licence conditions by being seen in a rap video recently. But fortunately, unusually, it seems the probation service have immediately acted and have taken him, recalled him back to prison.